Hi again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of RVBusiness Capitol Talk, sponsored by the Dicor Corporation. I'm Rick Kessler with RV Business. With me, as always, Sherm Goldenberg with RV Business. And joining the two of us today is the RVDA Inner Circle Brain Trust. How's that? We've got Phil Ingrassia. He's president of RV Dealers Association. Mike Pearo. Mike is the chairman of the board, and he's also vice president at Hilltop. I'm going to get this wrong. Hilltop Camper and RV in Fridley, Minnesota. Did I say that right?
You said that correctly.
Thank you, Mike. And Nathan Hart. Nathan is the first vice chair of RVDA, and Nathan is the general manager partner, Walnut Ridge Family RV Sales, and that's in Newcastle, Indiana, but also owner of a couple of other dealerships down in Louisiana, known as, and I'm going to say this wrong, but Primeaux RV Sales.
Yeah, Primeaux RV Sales. I'm a partner down there as well.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
I think it's relevant to point out that did all three of you recently just return from a trade association related set of meetings in California?
Yeah, that's right. We were down at the American Society of Association Executives CEO Symposium, and they hold this several times a year for associations of all types. But RVDA has been using this event to kind of check in with our volunteer leaders. This year it was Mike and Nathan, as we try to steer the ship of the association strategically. And they share a lot of best practices that effective associations use to move their industry or their professions forward. So it's a great time for us to spend some quality time together and work on RVDA related issues.
Also, near the top of your agenda, I'm guessing, is the next Con Expo. There's still some unknowns dangling in the air, I suppose we could say, with the pandemic, and who the hell knows what comes next. But the agenda and the priorities of your Con Expo, what can you tell us about that?
Well, we're definitely going to, I think you're going to see more networking opportunities with vendors. Also, vendor specific training was something that came out, didn't it, Nathan?
Yes, I mean, we also didn't just ask the dealer body what they wanted from the convention, but also our industry partners. And, as Mike mentioned, networking was a very large need for a lot of them, considering we don't have those opportunities really outside of the manufacturer open house. So that's an area. And then the vendor training plus is really important because it allows them to specifically discuss their brands in a place that so many attendees are at. They're going to be able to really reach a lot of people. So that's been a huge, very successful program with the Vendor Training Plus, and we're going to make some tweaks to that. And coming off of one of our top conventions we've ever had in the middle of a pandemic, we feel really good about this year. And there was a lot of energy there, a lot of excitement. And we believe that 2022 will only build upon what we did in 21.
Well, widening up the conversation to North America, or in this case, the U.S. and the market in general, what can you guys tell us about it? Now we're talking about everybody's dealership. What kind of shape are we in?
Well, from what we're seeing, at our dealership, and then just talking with other dealers we know across the country, is that the demand remains strong, and the areas that are having shows that are not requiring vaccination and things like that, the attendance is very good. The sales are very good. The areas that we're seeing where vaccinations are being required, they're saying that attendance is definitely been hurt at those shows, but the attendees going to those events are buying. So even with with both styles of shows, they're having some good success, and we're seeing it as well locally here. Although Minnesota, January, February are slower months for us, but we're seeing good early activity.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. We had a show in January, which going into it, we were a little nervous. I mean, the COVID numbers were the highest we'd ever had, and we didn't really know what would happen. Ended up being down attendance-wise about 8% from 2020, which was our best year we ever had attendance-wise. And it was, so 2022 was the third best attended RV show at the Indy RV Expo here in Indianapolis. So we were thrilled with that number, considering everything that was going on. And I believe that if we didn't have the restrict, there was a few restrictions in Indianapolis, but nothing too serious. But if we didn't have those COVID numbers, we would have blown those numbers away from 2020. And sales were good, and it's really a broad mix. There's not one segment that really stands out. We're selling everything from small entry-level units to the larger fifth wheels and everything in between. So it was an exciting show for us, and our people were excited because, like Mike said, our northern dealers like us, we slow down a little bit in January, February, and I know some of the numbers that I've talked to with some dealerships have been affected negatively by weather. And, that's just normally what happens this time of year. But when things get cleaned up, it seems like business is picking back up and demand is there.
Are these, so you're saying these buyers are still coming in as new to the lifestyle, the COVID buyers, so to speak?
Well, we're seeing that. I don't know if they're really COVID buyers as much as they love outdoors, and I'm glad we're on this Zoom call today, but I think a lot of people are tired of being on Zoom calls, and they just want to get out, and we all know that we just got back from California, so air travel's a necessity for many of us. But if it's a necessity for your work life, when it comes to leisure, you kind of want to stay away from those types of things. So air travel and hotels, they're a little bit difficult still to utilize. And if something goes wrong, you can be stuck someplace. So I think that people are still really love the RV lifestyle, regardless of whether COVID wasn't even in existence. I mean, I believe the demand would still be strong. But yeah, and we're seeing a mix of people that have units now that are trading up, and we're seeing some people that are trading down because they have a big fifth wheel and now they want to take smaller trips. And we're seeing everything, really every scenario. But trade-ins are increasing this year compared to last year so far for us in the first 5-6 weeks of the year.
Yeah, Nathan, I was going to say the same thing. We're you called them COVID buyers, but I think we're just seeing a shift out there where people are now being able to work from anywhere, and that anywhere now has sometimes become an RV a lot of times. But we are, like you, Nathan, we're seeing more trade-ins and a mix of probably a bigger mix than we were seeing early on in the pandemic. So yeah, it's like Nathan said, it's a mix of everybody.
One of the at the last Con Expo, one of the biggest topics of conversation among dealers, at least the ones that I talked with, was pricing. And there was some concern about the jumps that have been going on. But from what I'm hearing, people they're buying. So the pricing must be fine.
Yeah. Well, definitely, if you looked at the JD Power Valuation Services data that came out just a few days ago, that really hammered home what we've seen on pricing levels on all areas of the market. And right now, people seem to be, adjusting. And we're lucky that we have great financial partners that can get people financed and things like that. But, certainly our monthly dealer surveys show that pricing is certainly a concern for the future out there, as, people get concerned that the prices don't, price people out of the market. And, our friends in the boat industry certainly have seen that in the past, where the boats have become much much more expensive than they were just 5 years ago. And there's a feeling in that industry that may have stopped their growth a little bit.
I was just at the Detroit RV
Right.
show, and the pricing, I know that was a setup question, because just at that Detroit show, I'm looking at some of the MSRPs. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Well, I mean, we were concerned going into the show. I mean, in business, you don't like a lot of change, right? I mean, you like stability and predictability, but we didn't see it really bother anyone or keep anyone out of the market. And maybe it did, and we just weren't aware of it. But I mean, obviously, none of us want to continue to see the price increases that we have. I know from a few of the manufacturers, we've seen that slow the last few months, and hopefully that'll be a continuing trend throughout this year.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've seen a trend of slowing price increases. It was kind of, for a while there, it was every month you were seeing a price increase, and that has backed off a little bit. And like Nathan said, I hope that trend does continue, because we do want to keep our industry affordable.
Right.
And we had the luxury of our industry being very affordable going into the pandemic. And yes, we've seen some pretty good price increases, but I still think we're a very affordable option for families to travel and vacation. But again, it's there is a concern, should this continue, that could start to kind of put us in a position where we're not as affordable as we once were.
It seems to me that the biggest question on the industry's minds at the moment is what I'll call a soft landing, or the search for, emerging from the pandemic era, if it's safe to assume that we are, and I don't mean that as a joke, who knows where we are, but it looks likely that we could be coming out of it. And so how do you see things playing out with regard to that in 2022? Any of you guys?
Yeah, right now, inventory, going into this season, our industry's inventory levels are higher than they were a year ago. But they aren't what they were 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So we're still not in a situation where there's so much inventory, and if the switch is flipped tomorrow, we're in big trouble. I think we're in a situation where as long as the manufacturers, the dealers, we monitor our inventory, and we stay on top of what's happening in the market, we should be able to just have a nice soft landing and smooth out as this changes. But I also don't see the switch just flipping. As I stated before, we're seeing people's lives have just been changed and by the pandemic, and careers, jobs, they've all changed. A lot of these industries, they've realized we don't need to have a big office building and throw everybody in there to get the productivity that we need to get. We can let them work from home, and we can let them work from wherever. And so the businesses that are calling all their people back to these big office buildings are losing their people to the businesses that aren't calling their people back. So they're realizing to keep top talent, you got to give some flexibility and make, as long as they're getting the job done. So I think we will see the RV industry have a very good long-term effect with, people's ability to travel and work from an RV.
Yeah, I agree with Mike wholeheartedly on that. And when we talk about inventory, we have to also pay attention to, we can't just look at dollar amounts. We have to look at unit count. Because, if you talk to a bank and they say, hey, we, increased by $2 billion last month on outstanding loans or whatever for floor plan, that doesn't mean that the unit count, is back to where it was, because you have had price increases for quite some time now. And, we noticed that our used sales were down a little bit last year, unit count wise, but dollar wise, they were up. So you've got to really look at two factors there. But yeah, when we see the demand, continuing strong through this year. I mean, there's obvious things in the economy that we all want to keep our eye on, and we don't really know how they're going to play out. But so far, we think that the consumer demand is really strong. You see that really in every segment of the economy right now. And we don't have any reason to believe that they're going to quit spending money on leisure activities like camping.
It is amazing that here in February of 2022, that the demand curve still seems so strong. We looked at the Detroit show. What was it, Rick? 25, how many people? 12,500 people on Saturday at the
Yeah,
Detroit show?
Yeah, 27,000 overall for the 5 days. And I think just about every show, unless there's, a Boston show where there's a blizzard, among other things, everybody's reporting really strong numbers.
Well, and the industry's done such a good job of really providing products for basically all walks of life now. Really, when you look at an RV show, there's everything from teardrops to entry-level stuff for families to the more traditional larger RVs for, what was considered the core market, which was retirees. But that's not what it was. So really the industry, the manufacturers, dealers have responded to the market and that there's really an RV for all walks of life. So that, when you talk about a soft landing, the base of customers, I think, is much higher than it was when we were having some of those roller coaster years, maybe in the 1990s and 2000s.
Speaking for both of us, and I'll turn it back over to Rick here. It was a great interview, and I really appreciate the heck out of your time, all three of you. It was a pleasure seeing you, even though it wasn't in person. And look forward to seeing you down the pike here. Rick, why don't you take it?
All right. Really with that, nothing more to say. Just want to thank you guys again for your time. Thank you for making it back from San Diego in one piece.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Take care.